Sunlight shone through the windows as he sat in through your living room, your home phone pressed to your ear. Cove was on the other end. It had been shaping up to be an ordinary day like any other until Cove had called unexpectedly. He sounded unusually nervous greeting you. You listened silently as he kept talking, his words stilted. So I was just wondering, do you want to come over to my house for dinner tonight? Oh, he's inviting me for dinner! The question came out strangely, almost like he'd rehearsed it a few times beforehand. Your eyes widened a little. You hadn't expected this to be the reason behind the call. Yeah, I'll go. I can't. You kept listening. Yeah, I'll go. It was, huh? Oh! It seemed that Cove still had more to say, and you had just interrupted him. Oops. Cool, well... He stumbled for a bit, trying to gather his thoughts again. My mom and dad, they really want you to be there. If your parents don't have a problem with it, they asked me to ask you. You took a moment to think. Dinner at home would be quiet and uneventful today. If you really wanted to, you could go to Cove's instead. Cove spoke up again, breaking your thought train. His voice was softer than before. I also want you to be there, too. Aww, Cove. Can you? Come over, I mean? Yeah, I can come. I'll ask my moms and get back to you. No, I can't make it. Why am I the only one invited? Or did you mean the whole family? I'll ask my moms and get back to you. Okay, tell me when you can. You sounded noticeably relieved by your response. Was you coming over for dinner today that serious? He spoke to you for a little while longer to explain what time to come over and other details and hung up. And how's that, for now anyway. You called Ma right afterward and she picked up on the third ring. It wasn't a long conversation. When you asked to go to the Holden house for dinner, she was more than happy to give permission for it. No problems there. Ma wasn't one to complain about you spending time with Cove. Cove got a quick call from you afterwards, and he knew for sure that you would attend the dinner. Then you said your goodbyes and went on with the afternoon. Soon enough, the sun dipped out from the sky and evening came. It was time for you to head over to Cove's house. After letting Elizabeth know you were leaving, she didn't look away from the TV, just grunted. You made the small journey across the street. You knocked a couple times on the heavy door in your condo. As you waited for an answer, you found yourself contemplating being a guest while both of Cove's parents were there. It was exciting, you were apprehensive, the idea made you curious, you didn't think it would be especially interesting, you couldn't say you were thrilled. It was exciting. You had thought today was going to be boring, but it turned out to be much more interesting. You didn't get much time to do your thoughts, though. The door opened soon enough. Cove's mom, Kyra, stood in the front, smiling warmly at you.
Come on.
Hey, Yui! Come welcome! Come on in, please! She opened the door wider and moved to make room. Stepped inside, allowing her to shut it behind you. Ooh, nice place. Thanks so much for coming over. I know it was kind of the last second. Thank you for having me. Of course, just make yourself at home. It's not my home, but I've been given permission to say that. Hey, Yui, welcome to our humble abode. You jerked your head toward the sound of Mr. Holden's voice. He waved at you briefly from the kitchen, with his back turned with a large spoon in hand. Hope you're hungry because I'm whipping up a lot of tasty stuff. True to his word, you heard something sizzling on the stove. You closed your eyes and inhaled. It smelled spicy and savory. With Mr. Holden busy and Cove nowhere to be seen, it was just you and Kyra. She gave you a wry smile. He sure is. Well, I've been barred from cooking the entire time I'm staying here. Can you believe that? She nudged you with an elbow. Mr. Holden scoffed good-naturedly, then spoke over his shoulder. You're on vacation, Kyra. You need to accept that already. She yelled back in an amusement obvious on her face and in her tone. People still cook when they're on vacation. Everyone's gotta eat. Ah, I'm glad that they're, on good terms. You really don't see a lot of divorced parents that are on good terms, but I'm glad these two are. It's not like I'm some celebrity who came out just for every meal or hire a private chef.
Sorry.
Well, in this house, you're a VIP. Kyra smiled and shook her head quietly. Then she turned to face you once more.
Well.
Sorry about that, Yui. Here I was, trying to strike up a conversation with you, and Cliff just had to butt in. I don't butt in! She eyed him, chuckling in disbelief. He wasn't exactly disapproving her point with that. Kyra leaned over to whisper to you. It's okay. He likes to be included. Since Clifford insisted on cooking all by himself, we'll have to wait. The two of us can chat. Her next question continued to be said in a hushed tone, just to be safe.
So?
How are you doing? I'm doing good. I'm good. Things are okay. I'm really sure you didn't reply to our conversation. I'm doing good. That's what I like to hear. She opened her mouth to say something more, but some lightly pounding footsteps caught your attention. You took her to see Cove emerge from the hall a few moments later. He might have heard all the commotion and he left his room to see what was going on. He quickly took stock of the situation. Yui, you made it! Thank you for coming! Cove's voice was unnaturally loud, as if he thought you wouldn't be able to hear him from where you were only a few feet away. Hi, Cove. You doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. He didn't sound convincing at all. You needled your eyes suspiciously, but didn't call him out on it. If you could talk to him alone tonight, maybe ask him what was going on then. It was when you glanced away from Cove that you spotted his parents watching the two of you interact. Cove noticed their stares too, meeting them with narrowed eyes. Are we having dinner now? Not yet, but I'm still cooking. Alright, I'm going back to my room. As he turned to leave, he bent his head to the side to face you. You coming? The question was quiet, but you heard it clearly. He smiled, pleased that he asked, and he nodded in affirmative. Cove turned fully and made his way down the hall. Have fun, you two! We'll call you when food's ready to go. With that, you followed after Cove. The two of you made your way down the hall. This was the first time you ran to see Cove's room. You had visited Cove's room before, but only rarely. Going over to Cove's room was a standard occurrence for you nowadays. Rarely. Cove got to the door first, opening and stepping inside. You joined him. Ooh, pretty! Oh, he has fish and like his own little bunk bed. I used to have like a bunk bed in my room, but then I had to get rid of it to get the computer. There's a mat on the floor in front of the door. As he stepped over the threshold into his room, you felt the crunch of sand beneath your feet. The sensation was nothing new to you, of course. Cove constantly came back to his room covered in sand, but not bothering to clean himself off at the front door and got it all over his personal space. That's just how he was, a little bit of a mess. You haven't heard Mr. Holden ever scold him for it, not like your moms would have if you've done it. You can sit wherever you want. Cove himself took a seat at the edge of his large bed, looking like the picture of comfort, and left you to the side. I sat next to him on his bed. Cove smiled when you made yourself at home beside him. He grinned back. With the silence growing, your gaze began to drift. You stared at the bright fish swimming in the tank. There were a bunch of them, floating to and fro in the open space. They stood out starkly against the green aquarium plants. How long have you had those fish?
Yes.
My dad brought them for me not very long after I moved here. I guess it's been years now. Wow, that's a long time. You peered carefully into the tank. The fish looked to be doing well. You must take good care of them. Most of them were small, but there were some especially big ones. What are their names? I don't name them. Well, not really. Lifted an eyebrow at that. He continued the explanation sheepishly. Mostly I just call them things based on what they look like. Squirt for a little one, tangerine for a really big one, that sort of thing. I've had a lot of fish, and I'm not that good at coming up with names. You found that funny? You found that surprising? You found that relatable? I found that funny. God, I miss my saltwater fish so much. In case y'all don't know, I used to have fish a little bit before I started streaming. They were saltwater fish, and I loved them so much. I had like a clownfish, a couple of tetras, I think they're called. No, wait, they were clownfishes, some guppies. They were just really great, but I just remember the clownfish. His name was Nimoy. I also had Gilbert, Doofy, and Spinel. The first three are basically like off-brand Finding Nemo names, while the last one I just named Spinel after Steven Universe. Because why not? Who knew that was a weakness of his? That was an entertaining revelation. Oh, a couple of them have other types of names. Pointing to a small, orangish red fish. It was minding its own business away from the others. My dad named her Dreamcatcher, and that one's Mark. Mom came up with that one. Cove smiled to himself, his eyes reflecting from the glow from the tank. You let other people name your fish?
Nice.
He didn't turn to you, tilting his head to the side. There was a considering look on his face. Do you want to name one? Yeah, I do! His mouth grew a little at your enthusiasm. Cool. There's a few who don't have names right now, the newer ones. You can pick what you want to name. He pointed each of the recent acquisitions out to you. The first was the smallest fish in the tank. It was completely orange and zipped all over the place, running laps around the others. The second was slightly bigger and red. Its tail was dotted with black spots. It almost resembled freckles. The last fish was the biggest one. Its multicolored scales rippled under the bright light of the tank as it slowly made its way across the vast expanse. You went with the biggest fish. Cove only nodded at your answer, waiting for you to decide on a suitable name. You watched the fish you chose closely. As you did, a name eventually came to you. Frank, Sunbeam, Gil, Yui, Cove. Oh, I'm gonna type in my own name. I'll name it Hoshi. Not exactly a gay name, but it's still cute. Alright, it's Hoshi. With that, his attention moved from you to the tank. He peered fondly at it and its inhabitants. He smiled proudly at Hoshi as it swam through the tendrils of the plants, disappearing and reappearing soon after. You know, I'm not allowed to have pets in my house, not even fish. Oh god, I just realized I could have named it Rainbow! God damn it! The corners of Cove's lips turned down at that. It's not like fish will make a mess of your house or anything. You just gotta take care of their tank and feed them and they'll be okay. Right? My moms can be strict over the weirdest things sometimes. I don't mind it too much. I get it. They trust Elizabeth and me to go around the neighborhood alone, but they won't let us have a pet? It doesn't make sense. Maybe when you're even older they'll let you? I don't know. They seem pretty against it. Your current conversation brought to mind a memory from years ago. You launched it into you without any warning, earning a brief confused look from Cove. One time Elizabeth came back from playing at the beach and just shut herself in her room. She only came down for food, and then she ran back upstairs straight after. It was kind of weird. My mom didn't think much of it at first, though. Within a night, Ma went to her room to say goodnight and started screaming. Mom and I ran over to see what happened. Lizzie had this huge lizard in her arms. Cove's eyebrows rose at that, and he leaned forward in interest.
Really?
A lizard? Where'd that come from? Elizabeth said she saw it half buried in the sand and didn't know what it was. Then she pulled it out and got the answer, so she brought it home. She hid the lizard in her room for most of the day because she wanted to keep it. Mom and Ma were not happy. They worried about putting it out during night, but she was going to have to let it go in the morning. Lizzie was really upset. She did bring it back to the beach eventually, but she wouldn't talk to anyone for days. When she did get over it, it was almost like it never happened. You laughed thinking back to that time. Elizabeth had always been stubborn, even when she was younger. She forgot grudges quickly. Now it wasn't so easy. Well, she is a teenager, so I can't even imagine what it'd like to have a sibling. He gave serious thought to this statement before he told him. It's fun. There are ups and downs. You're lucky to be an only child. It's a nice idea in general, but my sister is Elizabeth. I don't know exactly how to explain what it's like. This one. Maybe if I had someone else as my sibling, I'd like having one more. That's interesting. I think your family's cool. You didn't have much to say. Though, while on the topic of your family, you considered your relationship with your moms too. They were absolutely the best. You got along with your moms. You thought your moms were okay. Your mom's difficult to deal with. They were absolutely the best. You couldn't even consider having another opinion. You couldn't have better parents. Well, say what you want about them, but at least your mom's never tried to pay someone to be your friend. The thought prompted you to look over at Cove. You probably still didn't know what happened. You doubted that Mr. Holden mentioned it, and you never had. You wonder if you should tell him. It was a long time ago, but you were keeping a secret from Cove. You didn't tell him it was a bad time. You didn't tell him you weren't sure how to react. You didn't tell him secrets are meant to be kept. You didn't tell him you just wanted to have to talk to... You just didn't want to have that talk with Cove. You decided to tell him. I don't want to tell him, so, this one. What if you got really upset? Just thinking about his possible reaction made you nervous. Time passed, but you really didn't notice. The two of you were busy, making plans for the rest of the summer and chatting about your respective days. Eventually, you heard a muffled holler from a different part of the house. You and Cove raised your heads in unison.
Oh.
It's time for dinner. Cove watched the firmly shut door he had been locked behind for most of that night. He didn't make a move to get up from the bed. You could see it in his face, but you didn't know what expression he was wearing. I'm glad you came. Cove peeked back at you from the side. It's been awkward. I get that. It's been hard on you, huh? You felt sympathetic towards him. You didn't know what he was saying, though, but you cared about him. Now would be as good a time to ask him why his parents so suddenly wanted you to come over. Is there a reason why you wanted me to come over tonight? It hasn't been awkward for me. Sometimes it gets like this when no one's around, but now you're here. Huh, he hadn't considered that, but it sort of made sense in a way. There was another shout from outside, too muffled to actually know the words, but you could imagine what they were. Let's go. Cove finally got up, lumbering away with his shoulders sagged. You followed after him. Together, the two of you made your way back to the living room. As you expected, Cove's parents were politely waiting for you at the kitchen table. Beside the windows overlooking the back of the house, food had been prepared and set. Mr. Holden beamed as you and Cove took your place. I hope everyone's hungry. I cooked up a feast.
Yeah.
I know I am. Yeah. Cove's mumble response wasn't nearly as upbeat as theirs. His parents didn't notice, or they pretended not to. Mr. Holden instead looked at you, grinning.
Thanks.
Let's all just take a moment to thank our special guest for being with us here tonight. I'm so glad you were able to make it, you, and on such notice, too. You thanked Cove's parents back for inviting you. Didn't say anything to that. You just felt kind of awkward about the situation. This one. I'm happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me.
Alright.
Well, that's it. Everyone please dig in. You can help yourselves to the food. Upon his encouragement, you looked over the meal spread out in front of you. There was a large garden salad in the center, surrounded by a variety of Mexican dishes. There were a lot of sides and optional sauces to add. You're very happy about these options. You could work with this. You weren't exactly a fan. This just kind of surprised you. You could work with this. You didn't mind Mexican food. Mom loved it, so you ate it at a family often. In a way, it made your first dinner at the home feel a bit more normal. Utensils and plates scraped and clinked together as the group been filling their plates. Cliff, could you pass the salsa verde? Of course.
Thanks.
Let me just say, you really outdid yourself tonight. I'm so jealous. Jealous of what? Your cooking is nothing to sneeze at, Kyra. Cove's parents made small talk, filling the silence with what seemed to be barely any effort. You chimed in as well. Did it take you a long time to cook all this, Mr. Holden? Oh, not at all. Sure, this is more than I usually make for me and Cove, but I enjoy every second of it.
Aha.
Might have gone fast if he had some help, though. Cove's mom grumbled, but it was lighthearted. Mr. Holden chuckled and shook his head. Not this again. I make the rules here, and I say guests don't cook. Even when they're staying for literal weeks.
Come on.
Even then. Everything looks great, Dad, as always. Thanks, Sport. Glad you think so. Cove smiled. It was genuine, even if it was strained at the corners. Brief silences interspersed the small talk. You piled some food on your plate and waited for your turn if someone was serving themselves a dish that you had your eye on. Once the food had been divided and things settled down, Cove's parents started talking again. Now then, you sat up in your seat when you noticed that they were both looking at you.
How's it going?
How's everything been over at your house? Are your moms well? You been keeping busy this summer, or maybe you're just trying to take it easy during the break? You felt overwhelmed by the sudden rush of questions. You're more than happy to answer. You were surprised, but you didn't mind the interest. You felt uncomfortable with the attention. You were more than happy to answer. Cove's parents seemed honestly interested to hear from you. You're kind of flattered by the attention. You answered how things were at your house. You told them how your moms were doing. You mentioned how things were done this summer. Moms. My moms are great. Mom took us out for dessert a couple weeks ago since her project went really well. Is that so? I'll have to congratulate her when I see her. The house. It's been good, is what you said, but you didn't mean it. It's alright, it's not that great. I'd rather not talk about it. It's been good.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's wonderful. Things you've done during the summer. I'm not sure where to start. There's been so much that happened. Mr. Holden's brows raised when you answered with that. You sure are keeping yourself busy. I could learn a thing or two from you. And now is that for answering questions. Kyra nodded along. You could tell she was actually listening to the words you were saying. She was trying to include you, not humor you. Did you know, Cliff, Yui is really into art? Oh, that's right. Very cool. It's just a hobby. I'm pretty serious about it. Oh, it's not a big thing. It's just a hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to do things for fun. Everyone needs a hobby. I've been thinking of picking up wood carving myself. You could tell how serious he was being about the declaration. Thanks. Cove's parents were definitely the encouraging type, but you could already tell that much about them. There was a long conversation as everyone focused their attention on their respective plates. No, not for the first time that Cove's parents were the only ones guiding the conversation. You wondered if you should break the silence this time. You brought up your own topic of conversation. You left coming up with the conversation topic to them. This one. I also like other things. Would you like to tell us more?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They looked genuinely eager for you to keep talking, so you did. The rest of the dinner continued just like that, with light conversation as you ate your meals. Eventually, all the dishes on the kitchen table were pretty much gone. Kyra sat down her fork and rested her arms at her sides, letting loose a satisfied sigh. Her plate was completely empty.
Thanks.
That was delish. Thank you for your culinary creations, Cliff. Mr. Holden was like a flower soaking up the rays of the sun. He beamed flattered by the praise. You ate way too much. You ate until you were satisfied. You tried not to eat too much, even though it was good. You ate until you were satisfied. It had taken you some time to finish it all, but eventually you cleared your plate. Cove successfully kept his presence to a minimum for the full meal. He was slumped over, even now toiling with his silverware. His parents practically only talked to you. Most attempts to entice him to join the conversation failed. It wasn't typical for him to say so little. He at least tried to participate. You didn't get much time to contemplate Cove's situation because your attention was taken by Mr. Holden pointedly clearing his throat. Not to sound like a broken record, but thanks for coming, Yui. I'm glad you finally got a chance to have you over for a real dinner.
What?
What? Did I hear that right? This is the first time Yui's ever had dinner here? Why in the world haven't you invited her sooner? Cove was always the one who was going over to Yui's house until now. I mean, how was I supposed to reject the generous offers of the Neon Posse family to host my kid? Kyra shook her head, but the amused smile she was sporting told you that she wasn't actually mad. This guy, honestly. The three of you looked over at Cove in unison, his small sound being more than enough to get his focus on him after his silence. By now, he'd stopped fiddling with his fork. Would it be alright for you to stay over, like for the night? Sleepover? Mr. Holden's shoulders stiffened. He sat up straighter, eyes darting back and forth between you and Cove. His mouth opened, not to peep came out. You'd never seen Cove's dad say no to him before, but this was different than the usual request. It wasn't so simple that Mr. Holden was lost. When Cove's mom reached out and took a hold of his shirt collar, he pulled him closer. She glanced at you two before leaning in and bringing a hand up in front of their faces. The two adults whispered seriously to each other. Cove's eyes opened wider. He leaned forward as if it would help him overhear his parents' conversation. Mr. Holden kept gesturing with his hand while Kyra made sure he didn't get too far with all his movements. Every now and then, both of them would watch you and Cove out of the corner of their eyes. It didn't seem like they were fighting to you. They looked more like some kind of tiny sports team having a private huddle. After a bit, they broke the group up. They moved back to sit properly on their chairs. You snicked a look at Cove. He stared at them expectantly. You were eager to hear their verdict, too. Kyra and I think that would be fine, but... He lifted a finger dramatically, his brows raising as he met Cove's gaze and then your own. We'll have to talk to you with your parents to make sure they'd be comfortable with it. If they are, we can arrange for a sleepover to happen on a different night. Then everyone is more prepared. If you folks don't like the idea, there's nothing we can do. He finished the mini-speech with a wide shrug during using his full arms. He also checked out Kyra from the corner of his eyes and gave her a crooked smile. Alright, fair enough, fair enough. She nodded approvingly and grinned back. You thought that you saw her give him a thumbs up, but her hand was partially blocked by the table. They looked so pleased with themselves over the answer, but they just passed the actual decision on whether it was alright or not to someone else, namely your parents. If this was the sports game, they would have punted the ball away. Cove hung his head, deflated. He had been hoping he could stay over today, but not some hypothetical time in the future. You gave him some words of encouragement. You pat him on the back. Psst, I'll sneak the phone into my room tonight. Hey, you could always sneak into my room again. You patted a little bit. Hey, you could always sneak into my room again. Cove's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. You wouldn't be surprised to have him knocking on your window sometime. Though, he would likely still want without the invite. With that, dinner finally came to an end. Mr. Holden stood up from the table and began collecting empty plates. Cove was asked to help out, which he did with little fuss. Kyra attempted to lay a hand as well. However, Mr. Holden didn't let her. It seemed she was barred from cleaning as well as cooking. You weren't allowed to chip in either, since you were there as the second declared guest of honor. Although the meal was over, the night wasn't. Looked like you weren't getting home just yet after all. You were just asked to wait on the couch. While Cove and his dad were cleaning up the mess, Kyra disappeared down the hall after shooting you a wink. It was a bit strange sitting by yourself while everyone else had something to do. Luckily, you weren't alone for too long. After a couple of minutes, Cove's mom returned with a deck of cards in hand. She strolled into the room confidently while shuffling. So, who's up for a few rounds? Cove and his dad looked over their shoulder at the question. They were mutually intrigued by the cards in her hands. She beat at their expressions and stepped further into the living room. Ignoring the couches, she sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table. She turned to you and gestured at the space between her and smiled invitingly. You accepted and followed her lead. The living room carpet was soft, although the hardwood floor underneath could definitely still be felt. Kyra did an overhand shuffle while she waited for the others to finish their task. The smile had yet to leave her lips.
Great.
This is going to be good! You were excited, you were nervous, you were bored, you were kind of annoyed, you enjoyed her enthusiasm. Cove's mom was funny, upbeat, and easygoing. You leaned closer to watch her expertly shuffle the cards. Alright, I'm ready. As he took a seat across from you on the floor, you noticed that Cove hadn't joined them. He went straight down the hall and said, even without a word. He stared on confused as he disappeared through his bedroom door. Cove's parents didn't look concerned at the son. Kyra nonchalantly split the deck of cards into two and rifled the halves together while offering an explanation of sorts. Cove doesn't keep his wallet with him when at home. He puts it away. What? Cove quickly returned to the living room, a black wallet in his hand. He took a place at the foot of the table with the rest of you. You blinked as Cove unzipped his wallet. You all use real money on card games with family? That's right, $5 per round per person. Winners take all. Go big or go home. Oh, are you planning on kicking Yui to the curb? Or do you intend on donating to the Guest of Honor's pot, Mr. High Roller? Mr. Holden narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the side of the couch, completely at ease.
No worries.
If Yui wants to play, I'll fund her way in. Don't you worry about that. He rested an arm across the top of a knee that he propped up. Cove's dad was acting slick in a way that he'd never seen before. You appreciated his offer, you joked that he shouldn't be so confident, you felt awkward about the situation. You surely it was pretty appealing, you ignored it. You joked that he shouldn't be so confident. Are you sure? I didn't mean you could be spelling out your doom. Right you are, Yui. I hope you can come back with that attitude. You know I can, Kyra. You can let me pay for Yui. She's my friend. Mr. Holden grinned with a chuckle.
Good kid.
Alright, bud, I concede. You're too polite for me. Well, you got your ticket. Interested in throwing in? You glanced around. This seems like a serious business. In response to your conversation, Kyra softened her competitive smile. Don't worry too much. Or I'll just do some rounds of Go Fish tonight. No
Do you
biggie.
mind?
What do you think? You joined in. I'd love to play. Mr. Holden gave you a big thumbs up while Cove nodded firmly back. You were really good at Go Fish. You're decent at Go Fish. You left it all up to luck. You're always pretty bad at Go Fish. I left it up to luck. Card games were mostly about chance after all. Fantastic. We'll play for however long everyone wants to keep going, or until people start running out of cash, but are still refusing to quit while they're behind. Speaking for yourself, I see. With a laugh, Kyra nudged you using an elbow, then motioned towards the other two with her chin. Don't be fooled with their soft faces. The boys are sharks. In reaction to her own words, Mr. Holden smirked and Cove's eyebrows became more angled. Kyra's phrasing made you think back to when you were young, specifically of Mr. Holden's favorite shark pants that he used to wear all the time. Perhaps they had been a fit for him in ways you didn't know of. You could feel tension in the air. Cove and his parents glued their eyes to one another, then all placed $5 bills in an empty space in front of them. Cove dropped an extra one for you, giving you a tiny smile after he did. Once this was done, Kyra began dealing out cards to everybody. It was time to begin. Your first round came and went quickly, with the group getting into the groove of things. You won right away, which meant you had the money to keep playing the second round. You're a natural. Nicely done. You better keep those wits about you for the next round, though. As the night went on, so did the games. Mr. Horn would jokingly shake his fist whenever someone other than him got a pair. Kyra acted as a news anchor, reporting on every move everyone made by speaking into her curled fists. Cove was still of a few words, but now it had been because he was focused on the game instead of being overcome with awkwardness. Most of the time, he even spotted a smile on his lips. You didn't win many of the games, but the others always chipped in for you. In fact, it was always a bit of a fight over who got to be your backer. It became clear that where the money went in the moment didn't really matter. They ended up giving it back to one another in other ways, and not just through more rounds of cards. You sat back looking over the scene. A tiny smile grew on your face. Cove's family was pretty cool, you thought. You were glad you got the chance to go over to spend time with the three of them. Yeah, Cove's family seems pretty cool. I thought that they were going to be arguing, but I guess they're pretty chill. Most chill divorced couple I've ever seen. Alright, let us do our last one, which is road trip, and then the summer will end. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. And today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activities as both you, your family, and Cove prepared for what they lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper so big you couldn't see Cove's house behind it. Oh, we're going on a road trip with Cove's family! Cool! His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. He glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed to be what he was dealing with as best as he could. Oh, or is it only Cove's parents? Okay. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. Oh, no, never mind. We're joining in. Cool. We weren't exactly sure how it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff opted to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit, while it was a really big car, putting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo! Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She fell behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I love the robe, Ma. It really suits you. I want one just like that, but in pink. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You could relate to Ma. It was way too early. Personally, you're as willing to go as your mom. I feel like you're in the middle ground between the two. Yeah. He just tried to keep up and take in some deep breaths. The air was still a little damp for him to do, but he didn't mind it. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Yui's the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for the younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the sides of the RV. Their trip plans had been nailed down to prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still had on to her objections with them. There is the main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed, Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You were fine with the arrangement. You were excited to sleep in a loft. You felt sharing a bed with your parents was going to be awkward. You were looking forward to having a sleepover with your moms. You weren't too happy with either, but didn't want to make a fuss. That was unfair that Cove had to sleep on the floor. You were excited to sleep in a loft. It would be a new experience for you, and sounded kind of cool. Alright, you two, does everyone have everything you need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At that word, Elizabeth yelped as she dashed back into the house, her bed head bouncing back behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a small smile, settling her hands on her hips. How about you, Yui? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? You weren't confident you had it all? You weren't so sure about that? Oh, you had to run back inside for something? You just gave her a flat look. Oh, you had to run back inside for something. Sprinting up the stairs to the bathroom, you grabbed your toothbrush from beside the sink before heading back down. You were glad you were reminded to grab it after having left it out to use this morning. It would have been embarrassing if you couldn't brush your teeth for the next few days, especially when I had to kiss Cove. Ew. Your mom was still there, waiting with a knowing expression as you walked out again. Got everything now, Yui? Yeah. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow and blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as... a portable gaming console, pencils and paper, your favorite stuffed animal, a couple things to read, a bag of makeup, a ball, your camera, an MP3 player with headphones. MP3 player? Don't we have an iPhone? I forgot, when did this game take place again? Portable gaming console. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Pen and paper! You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park, or if you had to write anything down if you needed to pass time just doodling. My favorite stuffed animal. Without fail, it always made you feel more comfortable whenever you went somewhere new. It was like taking a little piece of home away with you. These are just all things that I take with me, by the way. A couple things to read. You had packed one of your old favorites and a new one you'd never read before. You knew you had plenty of time for both of them on such a long drive. MP3 player. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that was everything. And let me take that for you, Yui. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fill. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finishing packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one of them got crammed into the storage compartments of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slumped over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. Oh, me too, bitch. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in mine. I can kind of understand, Elizabeth's struggles, though. This weekend, I'm going to be going away to Salem to do some Halloween-themed stuff. Because, just a little small vacation with, my mom and some family friends. Just a little girls' trip. So, part of me is worried about, not streaming for a couple days and not doing much. I know I really need the vacation. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You were excited for the trip too. You were very excited for the trip either. You were eager to get to this destination. You're curious with the RV. You didn't feel either way about the plans. You were excited for the trip too. It was great to get away to explore new places. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had been all wrapped up. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. Also, the loft looks cool. I would love to sleep on top of that. I don't know why. I always like sleeping in small spaces. It was tough and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kai were all huddled at the front trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out from the driver's seat and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're one less sleep than usual. Cliff gave a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place.
Nah.
I don't need sleep. I've got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive to the point about how resilient he was home, and Kyle rolled his eyes in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cove simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach as she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kyra laughed lightheartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for us all, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow. You stayed quiet, you shook your head at the ribbing. Oof, that's a relief. Just enough time to write up my last will and testament. We shouldn't gang up on the poor guy. It's not his driving I'm worried about. Either this one or this one. It's not his driving I'm worried about. Let's not forget how many times Mom has put a dent in our car. It was only twice, and neither of those times were my fault, thank you very much. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kyra wrinkled her nose and thought. Hey. Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held onto the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a wedge settled on your brown hair. When you tilted your head up, carefully to look, you heard the rustling of the bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips after the weight of the packet left your scalp. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with the group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours had arrived after your destination and found a spot to park in front of the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed some sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms in the background and closed the door behind you before crawling onto the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for only the three of you together without too much squishing. Good night. Get a good rest, Yui. You've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and forest in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You had slept well, you had an okay sleep, you slept terribly. You had slept well. You fell asleep before you knew it and had woken up rested. Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpack that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park. Wow. Cove had his head tilted upwards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person. Smiley too! You spun just in time for Kyra to snap a picture of you two and Cove together, before she pointed to her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protest that she would just enjoy the moments. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets and knows so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You were in all of the redwood trees, you were fascinated by the sensations surrounding you, you were in a good mood, you weren't as impressed as the others, you were embarrassed that the adults were being so touristy. You were fascinated by the sensations surrounding you. Bird calls echoed all around you, and once or twice something would rustle in under the underbrush. You strained your eyes through the trees for any sign of wildlife and managed to catch a glimpse of a rabbit bounding through the foliage. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not so sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly, and continued walking along. Just watch. Next year they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You're supposed he was used to it by at this point. I mean, we've been friends for 5 years, so I assume. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we will be related legally anyway. Oh no! Oh no! She said it as though we were gossipy old ladies. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. No! 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 Not you and Elizabeth. Us, Cove. Me and you. What? Me? Yeah, that way you would be my sister-in-law. That'd be fun. Not quite, Cove. Elizabeth stuck out her tongue at Cove as if the very idea was ridiculous. You told her to cut it out already. Cove has a point. It wasn't a great comment. I'll marry you, Cove. You ignored Elizabeth. You were embarrassed. I'll marry you, Cove. We must unite our family ties to increase our pull in the community. And that would be fitting, considering what you thought about when you first met him. A political marriage? It might be alright with you. Then it's an agreement. Alright, close enough, sure. Close enough.
Sure.
Okay. Elizabeth poked out her tongue at the both of you, giving you a sour look. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the response she was looking for, and you and Co swapped amused looks. The day continued on, with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities, that way you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you had sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. You're glad you got to do this in the end. You're disappointed to only have one day in the park. You thought the long trip wasn't worth it, only one day here. You had more fun hanging out in the RV. You haven't had a good time with this trip. You're glad to do this in the end. It was definitely a special experience, and one you'd remember for a long time to come. You smiled to yourself, committing the sights and sounds to memory. Your group made it back to the camp just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner. Then afterwards, you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. You headed up to the loft to relax on your own. You hung out with Cove. I think we all know what I'm gonna do. We might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long they'll be out for. You took a seat out on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot. It's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I'm the same way. I don't mind either way. I love wearing layers. I love layers and accessories too. I get cold easily, so I love wearing layers. There's something about a lot of layers that makes me feel all snug and comfortable. Yeah, I get really cold easily, even during the summer, so I tend to wear a lot of layers. Even right now, I have my robe on, and I have a blanket draped over my legs, so I'm nice and toasty. Ko smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. You changed the subject. You asked him what he liked to see others wear. Ooh, this would be interesting. Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on other people? Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he had the chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing. What do you mean by that? That was funny. You paid it no mind. That was funny. You laughed out loud, and Cove gave you a dry look.
Come on.
It's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you mean, then. Is there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath, and he couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. It was a topic that made him uncomfortable, so you let it go. You had a little fun, that was enough. You changed the subject. You're not very good at this conversation, are you? I swear I won't make fun of you. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about. You had a little fun, and that was enough. You changed the subject. You weren't going to make him answer, so you let it go. Your parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There would be a need for all of them to get up. Now is the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident that you had all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previous set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. You enjoyed this mini-adventure. You thought the trip was okay, you felt the trip was a waste of time, you hadn't had a good time. You enjoyed this mini-adventure. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, that was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. Wondering if Cove was still awake, and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because silently his eyes locked on yours. It is difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. Aww. You grinned back at him, you made a silly face, you waved at him. Made a silly face. Cove rolled his eyes at you, or at least you thought he did. You then gestured for him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually, he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad and make it to the ladder, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up to you and whispered, "What?" "Hi." "How's the thing? How are you doing?" You invited him up to the loft. "Do you want to come up?" His eyes widened, just so. You could only tell because he had come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you. "Okay." He broke into a grin and scooched back so as far as he could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Oh! He's so precious! He's so precious! I love him so much! God, I can't wait for their next chapters. I can't wait. You laid down next to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go and was rested along his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. "So what am I doing here?" "I don't know. I thought we could hang out. You can sleep here instead of the floor." "I thought we could hang out." Cove's eyebrows dipped. You probably thought you had something more important than that going on. "It isn't a big deal for us to both be in the loft, right?" "Yeah, it's not some huge thing. We shared a million times by now, and usually they're the only ones encouraging us." Cove gestured in a gesture at the parents, and you nodded in agreement. They had always tried to put you and Cove together ever since you were little. Okay, so our parents shipped us too. Gotcha. I mean, I kind of already knew that with, our moms talking, but still. I wonder how much trouble we'll be if we get caught. It wouldn't be nearly as much as we wouldn't have been if my moms found out you snuck into my room for the night at the start of summer. He was just imagining it. I still can't believe I did that and didn't get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You could easily picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove? No, I don't think so. Cove trailed up, and he seemed to be lost in his thoughts. Well, maybe sometimes. Cove smiled fondly at you, and you grinned triumphantly. You spent the rest of the night smooshed up in the little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you had gotten up to together over the years. Eventually, the chatting trailed off when you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep, and you followed soon after. When you woke up the next morning, it was just the rumble of the RV as it traveled along the journey home. You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Blinking sleepishly, you slunked over to the edge of the lot to find out where he had gone. Maybe he had snuck back into a spot on the floor during the night? However, you soon noticed him sitting on the couch talking quietly with his mom. His head hung in embarrassment. Oh no! Kyra caught him! Your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. She simply smiled immediately, and it was obvious what had happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. Oh no! You knew it was going to be a long, long time before you lived this one down, if you ever did. Soon, your moms and Elizabeth emerged from the room, dressed and ready for the day of travel. You You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. You were happy to be in your own bed. It felt weird to be alone. It felt good to be alone. You wished you were still on the trip. You missed being near Cove. The two of you had basically been living together for 3 days. It was nice. But you knew that wouldn't be the last time you two would spend time together, and that thought comforted you. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go on like normal. Alright, let's do, and then summer ends. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were heading to class. You were excited to go back. Anxiety gnawed your stomach. It was a bummer. Your feelings were muddled. It was a bummer. Summer had been so much fun. When you thought about going back to school, it was like a sense of loss. Soon, you wouldn't be able to choose between how your days were spent without the school bell telling you where to be and when. It was with a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be difficult. You have come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas summer vacation was just a respite into the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of the sleeve. You pulled it through and pull your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you finally gotten a chance to know her. You had become extremely fond of her. You didn't really like her. Your mind wasn't made up on how you felt about her. You didn't care one way or another. You're happy you finally got a chance to know her. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you around to his house when she was ready to be set off, but you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people. Once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. The next thought that crossed your mind was, it would only be polite to get the door for Cove. You went downstairs to wait. You couldn't wait to see Cove, so you went downstairs to meet him when he arrived. Cove knew your house well enough. You could lounge in your room to wait for him. This one. You bound down the stairs and your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first, so if you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you chose to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there, just as you expected. Seeing you, he flashed a bright grin.
Hey.
Hi, Yui. Hi, Cove. Come on in. Once he stepped inside, you beckoned for him to follow you upstairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered him a seat, but you and Cove were blonde past those sensitive stages of friendship. Your room was familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. You rolled it across your bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
We've got some time. She's still got to shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to keep just hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out to the side of the window and chuckled. Can't believe she's already leaving, just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile trickling his cheeks. Yeah, you nodded. She'll be back. Time goes by so fast. She'll be back. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove perched an elbow on the chair's arm and propped his jaw against his curled hand. There was a natural ease in his movement, a familiarity from the echoes of all the times before when he'd sat in the same position. This was a really nice summer. Totally. It was alright. I'm glad we got to spend so much time together. And if I'd better, I'm looking forward to the next Totally. Cove still nestled cozily in your chair and smiled at your response. How are your fish doing? Really good. Things in the tank are stable and everybody looks healthy. That was nice to hear. Learned from Cove how hard it was to maintain an aquarium. It really is. As someone who had tropical fish, they are really hard to come by. Like, you can't just, like, put fish together in, like, the same aquarium. You have to, like, do your research and make sure, like, fish, like, get along with each other. And clownfish, believe it or not, they're dickheads. They will try and fight with whatever fish. Like, they will try and fuck with them. So, yeah, if you ever, want to get an aquarium, do your research. Hoshi has been busy. Keeps starting between the plants and out again when I walk by like a game of peekaboo. Or hide and seek. Yeah. Cove oddly glanced out the window. He gave a resigned sigh. It's gonna be harder to surf, you know, with school getting it colder down. I don't want to get rusty. I don't know how I'm going to go without surfing. I like surfing, but I wish it liked me. I'm over surfing now. Surfing's cool when we can. Sorry, Cove. I like surfing, but I wish it liked me. I can't stick to the board. He gave a little smile, coupled with a shrug as a response. Yui, Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you from both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty looks on his face, Cove had done the same. Just had a call. Cove's mom's ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. He doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Miss Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was inevitably painful, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tensed leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you both could cross the street.
Oh.
The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. You smiled at him reassuringly. You gave him his pat on the back. You rested your hand on his arm. This isn't the last time you'll ever see her. You rested your hand on his arm. Cove looked at you like he was hoping you'd have a solution for how he was feeling. All you could do was give him his arm a squeeze for support. At that, some of the conflict wearing on his face eased a bit. Together, you went across the street and went inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey, kids. Good timing. I just called the taxi.
Hi.
And hi, Yui. I'm so glad I got to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face on to that name I've heard so many times. She winked and Cove pouted on cue after the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. I hope you had a good time visiting. Bye. He didn't say anything in response. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. Hope it won't be too long before we see each other again. Nodding, Kyra nodded her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was in phase and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly.
I'm so glad.
I'm so happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride, and then Cove stiffened. Kyra loosened her hold on him enough to study his face. Concerned, she spoke her next words in a whisper that had been meant just for her son.
What do you think?
Do you want to unshelve it? Raising an eyebrow, Cliff watched them carefully. His smile began to falter.
What's wrong?
Cove sighed as his gaze flickered over to you for a moment, and then just as quick, it was back on his parents.
It's okay.
It's alright. Oh right, about the whole surprise thing.
Really?
Are you sure? I don't want to do it now. I can tell Dad later. Nervously, you watched the exchange with the growing suspicion that Cove didn't want to have the conversation while you were there. You wondered if you should offer to leave when Kyra gave Cove a pat on the head.
Alright.
You can always call me if you want me to be part of the conversation, okay? I'll call. Thanks, Mom. Cliff still looked baffled about what Kyra and Cove were referring to, but he watched as his shoulders slowly relaxed. He figured that he decided to wait for Cove to be ready to talk to him. And with Cliff's silence, things seemed to be settled for now. After that, it was long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house and in clear view of the open door. Kyra stood up, smiling sadly.
Wow.
That's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kyra as you all filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kyra's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. You stood uncomfortably, and you waved as soon as you noticed them.
What's up?
Hey, Yui. Hi, Cove. Hey, Derek. It's been a while, my dude. When did you get here? My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time. Sorry. I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. Derek came to hang out often, so it was inevitable that the two had met at some point this season. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but the reassuring words soothed their worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help? Nah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kyra took one last look at everyone inside. Alright, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kyra still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk into the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there.
Can do.
And could you call tomorrow too, so I can tell you how school went? Of course, I want to hear all about it. Kyra put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She didn't let go, only to move into squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom!
Cove.
I love you so much, baby. She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap in the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad and then wrapped an arm around his back.
Bye.
Bye, Mom. Bye, travel safe. Kyra rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again. Before she was out of sight, you decide to call out with your family and hers, wave goodbye, watch quietly. Call out with your family and hers. As you add your voice to the others, you watch Kyra's smile grow larger. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps into the empty street, still looking into the direction his mom went. He smiled quite quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This was a great vacation, huh? Yeah, I don't think so. You're not in agreement. You shrugged. I don't know. Summer isn't over until the second I fall asleep. No naps for you, then. Can't risk you accidentally ending summer a few hours too early for the rest of us. Chuckling, you shook your head and amused.
Well?
Ma clapped their hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Your mom's exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head.
How sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's alright. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away discouraged.
It's okay.
I don't mind. He was a little bashful about it. You wonder if Mom's joke had just reminded him he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It's getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried it again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go have fun? You all can come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good.
Another stunning idea, Lonnie. Thanks.
Thank you.
That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to creep your style. I've got some stuff to work on so I can be out of your hair this afternoon. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. You grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invite. You look over the assembled crowd with knowing glances. I can help too. With as many people as you're feeding, there's going to be a lot of food. Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow and Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing some time with his pals. That would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef. Ma and Ma exchanged furtive glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his lip. Then all of us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out? Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a sound question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment.
Alright.
I'll stay with the kids.
That's fantastic.
That's great. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face.
So?
What now? You sadly wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you only to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just generally want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. Okay, if you guys really want to, and there's nothing else to do. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group, down to the beach and then to the left. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive, one of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes, wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool! He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam in his eyes. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Who would you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat, please? Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss at this shopping street? No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here, I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows whenever they want to do whatever. That's so neat! Will we be allowed to do something too? Cove laughed and Derek almost began vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What would we do? Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know?
What?
But that's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that'd be great to get a crowd pumped. He thought it was a great idea and wanted to be a part of it. He felt he could at least try his idea on his own. Thought Derek needs to be abandoned that idea stat. He gave a look to the other two. Derek continued to brainstorm out loud about different potential performances while he glanced over at Cove and Elizabeth. I mean, I can bounce a soccer ball in my head. Last time I tried, I got 8 bounces before it fell. I want to bring a ball here. Why not? Cove gestured to everything around. The stalls, the people, all the colorful chaos that made up the shopping street. Would you want to chase a lost ball all here? And what if it hits somebody? Even if you're good, somebody else could bump into you. That's true. Derek thought about it some more. Then he watched another performer, a woman doing tricks with 2 small dogs. One was fluffy and a cream color, while the other was a cool gray. The woman held up rings. Both animals jumped through the openings, happy to receive a treat at the end. Derek brightened. Maybe I'll teach crabs how to race? Crabs? They could work. With some amusement, the gang continued to peruse the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings at the dangling, badly misprinted club that everyone laughed at. Bill picked out a glove as Iceland, but Derek thought it had to be Greenland. You know this is a world with what looks like 9 continents? I think you're both wrong. You want to decide with Cove? He backed up with Derek. You agreed with your sister. No, it's Australia. Stay out of it. Side of the Cove. Looks like Iceland to me. Right? Suddenly Cove froze. He stared at him and tried to see what caught his attention. When he saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Oh no, Jeremy! Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, his eyes wide in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove sighed. Neither of them were happy to see him again. You stood there shocked, you glared at Jeremy, you waved at Jeremy, you decided to smile at Jeremy, you looked away. You didn't want to even start with Jeremy's shenanigans today. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled lightly. I'm glad he's not trying to start anything. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See? That was the mean kid.
What?
Huh? She simply didn't get it. That first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression of her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off. Just forget about him. I already have. He laughed and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for a vacation, but the parents he hated, that glimpses was probably the last summer. You mentioned the realization to everyone. You kept the thought to yourself. Mention the realization to everyone. Jeremy's probably gone for good now. It's time for him to go back to wherever he's from.
Yeah.
Guess he won't have to worry about that guy anymore. But I think it's kind of sad Jeremy turned out to be, well, like he is. Would have been nice to have made another friend. Cove shook his head. He was clearly not broken up over what might have been. Good riddance. I think I might want to see him again sometime. Maybe he'll become nicer in the future. I'm happy it's over. He stayed quiet. Good riddance. Elizabeth rolled her eyes at the strange farewell to the odd boy. Not interested in the slightest, she clearly didn't understand his impact, and at this point, she didn't want to understand. You couldn't help but wonder, though, what more would have happened if you had interacted with Jeremy more. You're glad you wanted to find out. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. You thought he was horrible, you thought he was weird, you thought he was stupid, you thought he was kind of pitiful, you thought he was okay, you didn't know what to think about him. You thought he was kind of pitiful. You and the group moved on from one stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left as Elizabeth mentioned the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls on his feet.
Okay.
Come on guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving. If we have to, I can't wait. Poof, I've had enough walking around. Homebound we go. He nods silently. If we have to. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then. He looked at him appraisingly. Yes, Cove, to carry you back to the house. He nodded at him. Carry me! Hey, Cove? Yeah? Could you carry me back home?
What?
Cove smiled, said he was amused, while the tilt of his eyebrows was full of disbelief. He explained he wanted the piggyback ride. You didn't want to walk back. You told him it was a special occasion. You decided to let it go. This one. I want a piggyback ride, and you're the only one big enough to give me one. Cove sighed and shook his head. Elizabeth and Derek became a chorus of laughter. Come on, Cove. It'll be fun. Alright. Cove stepped over to you. He looked like he couldn't believe what he was doing. Your lips quirked into a large smile. Ah, yeah, thanks. He carefully crouched down in front of you so that you could climb on. It took a little bit of clamoring to get yourself completely up on Cove's back. However, when Cove slipped his arms under your legs and stood up, you felt very secure. Elizabeth watched with a smirk on her face while Derek laughed even harder. It was fair to say that your antics were entertaining. You were glad Cove went along with it. Cove carried with you home, contently. Other than a few good-natured jokes at your expenses, he didn't complain. He made it all the way back to your house without putting you down. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got the front door and held it open for everyone as you each moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone! You made it just in time.
Hey.
I hope you're hungry. When Cove had just brought you inside, the parents couldn't help but notice the odd convenience. Your moms were unsure, and Holden raised an eyebrow.
Everything okay?
Did you pull something, Yui? I'm okay. Aw, Cove, you've gotten so strong.
Good kid.
And reliable too, what a guy. Cove rolled his eyes at the commentary, then started walking to your couch. You bent down and you let yourself plop back onto the couch. Thanks for the lift. Cove exhaled loudly and shook out his arms. He just seems relieved to have made it. So did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware have already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. It was fine. I had fun. I really liked it. It was okay, I guess. Yeah, the bank heist went off without a hitch. Joke got some chuckles going around the table. That's good in my book. Casually, Mr. Holden sat in an empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we've had a big group this over for a big meal. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure y'all get one. Sure. Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As everyone got set up, Ma shied at Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table.
No.
And you shouldn't slouch. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and Ma gave a level to look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either. Elizabeth groaned, long suffering. Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not bad.
The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed and it was true. His posture was uptight and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners on top of all of his attempts to aid your parents made him the model meal attendee behavior.
Aw.
It's nothing. It's true though. You've been a lovely guest. I've noticed that too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek. Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guest? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Oh, is there just nothing to say? Well, Cove is my number one, but he still cleans his hand by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absentmindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks. Manners, who cares? I don't think it's that big a deal. You teased Cove for his bad habit. You complimented Derek on his politeness. You took that Derek was basically an adult, kept quiet, and took a bite of food. Manners. I don't think I'm not seeing your elbows where they shouldn't be, Yui. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the other played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed by quickly and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holland talked to your moms and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving. It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you'd figure was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see you. Cove turned to you and smiled lightly. Bye, Yui. You hugged Cove goodbye, you patted Cove on the back, you nudged Cove's shoulder, you ruffled his hair, you waved. You hugged Cove goodbye. You stepped forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove hugged back tightly and his chest rumbled as he laughed.
Dude.
Seriously, dude, we'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school. He offered Cove a high five and the two boys clapped their hands together. Cove and his dad left real soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up after the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He liked to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. He decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting with me. You kicked at the ground distractedly.
Well.
Dad's still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk? Sure, I don't mind. TV walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll, too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up in the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping up on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground and he raised an eyebrow. Is everything okay? If you want to talk about something, I'm here. Derek, what's going on? He kept quiet. If you want to talk about something, I'm here. I'm a little sad. It's just, with school starting back up again, it's going to be harder to visit. I'm going to have homework and clubs and practices and everything else.
This sucks.
We have to go to a different school. What if we don't have time? You channeled some optimism into the conversation. You shared those worries. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for the weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. The plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was hard to read his expression. Hey, Yui. I actually wanted to talk to you about something if you don't mind. There's a long pause and waited for him to finish his thought.
Sorry.
I was just kind of wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who was a boy? Sorry if that was weird to ask. Oh shit, I did not expect that. I could be with a guy. Maybe. I don't know. You didn't answer him. I kind of don't want to talk about it. I could be with a guy. Okay, then. He hesitated before finishing his question. What I mean is there any guy you think is kind of cool that you like around here? Not at school or anything like that. Oh, Derek has a crush on me. Oh, this is awkward because I like Cove. He ducked his head further. He thought about it. I like you. Well, I like Cove. Mr. Holden. There are a lot of guys I think are cool. Not right now. I don't really want to say that. Well, I like Cove. Derek raised an eyebrow. He didn't look all that convinced. I can't tell whether you're kidding or around or being serious. I really didn't think you was Cove? Derek started to mumble to himself, sounding very confused. Maybe she didn't really get my question? So... Derek pulled himself together. Somewhat meekly, he looked at you while he tried to project confidence. His posture was too tight for you to believe it. He was nervous.
Alright.
You know, thinking ahead and everything is important. You've got to get yourself a game plan and all that. It's good to make plans, especially backup plans. He babbled, all full of energy and forced gusto. Well, anyways, I heard about this thing where people make pacts with their good friends that if you don't find anyone else, then they get together. Together. Like they get married and stuff. So I was thinking, since it's a good plan to have plans, it'd be cool if we did something like that. His eyes widened and he started to make frantic hand gestures. Just so you know that we'd never have to worry about the future or finding someone. We can set it like a whole decade in the future, forever from now. We'd have graduated high school and probably college too. We'd have jobs and be really grown up. I mean, we'd probably have our own place and maybe our own pets and student loans and cars. Derek babbled on for a while more. It was as if it was all words he held in silence during the walk had burst out now, all at once. So yeah, what do you think? It's a good idea. I think having a backup plan sounds smart. You accept the idea because you're fond of Derek. I'll think about it. I don't think that would work. I'm sorry, Derek. Do you like me? I'm gonna save here just in case because I don't like where this is going. Do you like me? Of course I like you, but it's not. He had to pause to start to find a way to explain himself. Well, you don't have to think about that kind of thing right now. It's better to worry about all that later when we're grown up. That's why it's a good idea to have a plan, you know? And well, honestly, I think you and me would work out the best for that.
So...
I'll think about it. It's kind of a big decision for just being put on the spot.
Mm.
Yeah, sure, don't worry about it. It was just an idea. Thanks for hearing me out and answering my questions and stuff. You felt a little worried that Derek wasn't happy. When he saw your face, he smiled encouragingly.
It's okay.
I promise I'm not mad. I was just wondering. I'm sure things will be okay in the future no matter what. You just nodded. You didn't spend so much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so they both made your way back down the street. After Derek went home, you decided to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed that the living room and phone were free. You took it easy. You called Lee. I'll call Lee. Pick up the receiver and quickly punch the familiar number while going to take a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Lee answered. Hey! Hi, Lee. Can you talk? Definitely. We practically have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer? School starts first thing tomorrow for me. And I thought starting next week was bad enough. Enjoy your last week. Oh, I will. I hope you'll survive your first day. Me too. I need a good year. Ditto. And at least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy. Yeah. Fondly, you thought about all the best memories you made this summer. Lee was there for some, but there were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. You reminisced on a moment of your summer. You moved on to talk about her. You began to speak about the road trip you took, the one with the big shopping trip in the morning, that time you went to Cove's house for dinner, the incredibly hot afternoon, the road trip you took. I went on a vacation. Cove's parents ended up inviting my whole family on an RV road trip.
Really?
That's awesome! It was a 3-day trip and we visited the Redwood National Forest. Lucky! The park was amazing. It was fun hanging out with everyone all together. I really liked riding in the RV for the first time. Cove snuck up in the loft where I was staying. Cove.
What?
Cove did wait! Start at the beginning. It took a while until you stopped laughing from Lee's reaction, long enough to tell her every detail of the story. She excitedly squealed more than once. I can't believe you've been holding out on me with such a juicy story. Nothing really happened. Keep telling yourself that. You have to keep me updated on what happens next. It was hard to focus on what she was saying. Your face was probably red right now, just thinking about what happened. You reminisce about a moment of your summer. Oh, don't talk about her. Let's talk about her. What was your big highlight of the summer, Lee? Talking to you is always the best part of my summer. Aww, she's so sweet. Even though it was a phone call, you just knew that Lee was winking at you. You laughed, shook your head. Come on, tell me. Good, I'm glad you picked the right answer. That had Lee laughing hard for a few moments. Alright, so high point for me when I took a trip with my parents to Europe. That was amazing. You and Lee continued to go over your adventures until you both were yawning to each other over the phone. After that, you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up in the morning. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Bye, Neely. Talk to you later. You left the phone on the side table for now. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw that it was only about 10 minutes before until your mom's would be insisting you had to go to bed so you could be rested enough for school. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless, and looked out the window. Startled initially, you spotted this figure out in the hills. It was Cove. When the surprise faded, you realized it really wasn't that much of a shock at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. You went outside to meet up with him. You ran off to go see him. You left him alone. You smacked the window to get his attention. You opened the window, caught to him. You ran off to go see him. Sprinting, you reached the front door in record time. You didn't think you'd see Cove again that day. You had to go to him. When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence as you waded through to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached, and you noticed right away that Cove looked happy to see you. Hey. You had a bounce in your step. You weren't sure how long you got before your mom's roped you back inside for bed. Hey, what are you doing out here? Not really. He shrugged, seeming unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Well, I guess I was feeling kind of weird about stuff, so I'm getting some fresh air before bed. You should get some sleep. I know you feel. I feel good. I hope you feel better. You shrugged back. You nodded. I know how you feel. It's hard to stay still. Tomorrow's going to be the start of a new year. At the mention of school, a small noise escaped him. Cove let himself fall back onto his butt and then all the way down. So he was laying on his back. He looked up at the sky. You lay down yourself. You sat in the grass. You stood there. You sat on his chest. I'm not sitting on his chest. Not yet, at least. You lay down on yourself. You lowered yourself to lay back on the hill.
I'm sorry.
For being kind of awkward when my mom was leaving. Surprised, you stared at him for a moment. You weren't expecting that. I just wanted you to know I talked to my dad about how I felt and things. It's okay now. You were genuinely glad to hear that, and it brought a small smile to your face, but your thoughts quickly wandered back to the first day you met Mr. Holden. Did his dad confess about that? From the way Cove talked? You guess he hadn't. But there was more Cove and his dad should talk about, but it was a relief to know that they made a start. Now was not a good time to bring up what you were thinking about, though. You couldn't wait longer to say it. It was almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days would have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response, and you had no idea what to say. Cove just stared at you unblinkingly. What? It's you. Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused with your reaction. That's what you do all the time, so I'm being you. You do that all the time too. So do you, Cove. You were stunned. He noticed something enough to take a note of it. I don't do that much. Not being able to argue with his assessment, you accepted it. You felt bashful about his joke. Feeling subconscious, you glanced at the ground and you felt a blush burn across your face. When you dared to look back, you saw that Cove was smiling unapologetically. He wasn't trying to be mean with it. Honestly, there weren't many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realized there was no denying that you two had been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you then. With a final wave, Cove headed for home, but then you stayed for a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to this simple statement. See you tomorrow. No matter how much was always changing around you, there are some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hills felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with the thoughts about the future. You felt excited, nervous, unsure. Excited. There was a little doubt in your mind that things were moving forward, and you couldn't wait to find out what changes were waiting for you on the horizon. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wishful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope that you would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from the outside jostled you. You snapped your eyes open, noises happened, you just tried to forget it. You stubbornly kept your eyes pressed shut. Is it Cove at the window? The light clatter continued. Now that you were more alert, you could distinguish it as tapping sound, quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow and looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of the light filtering into your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun. It had barely hauled itself over the horizon, but that didn't stop some people, it seemed. You sat up in bed and opened the window. Cool air, not yet warmed by the day, tickled your face as it pushed into your room. And just as you expected, there was your neighbor crouching on your windowsill. He was fully dressed, though not for school. He was wearing a wetsuit with a fond smile. Hi, Yui. You stared back, blinking. So technically you won't be back for school for a few more hours. His voice was delicate yet deliberate, each word a careful explanation. Classes haven't actually started yet, so do you want to hit the beach with me one more time this summer? Always. Here we go again. It's way too early, Cove. You're crazy. Cove, you're so cute. You gave a decisive nod. You're so cute. He smiled wide and affectionately. You rushed to get changed into something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled but somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out of your front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination and back to you. You checked the door was closed and gave him a thumbs up, and the two of you leaped into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. One glance at Cove, being told that he was exactly the same, holding back snickers of fear of being hurt and caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling down was a real threat. It just wasn't enough of one of you to make you slow your pace. For one, every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead of you two would arrive, and you were happy to meet it.